We're here with Darryl Anka, channel for Bashar, and we're asking some of the most common questions that come from our listeners. What is channeling?
Channeling is a natural altered state. We all do it. People, when they are doing what they love to do, a painter that is painting, a singer that is lost in the song, an actor that becomes the character, is channeling. An athlete in peak performance, an educator that's teaching people and is passionate about it, is in a channeling state. This is one of the things I really think is important, is to demystify the idea that only a few people are channels. Everybody channels, everybody has the ability, and when you are following your passion, when you're in that flow, when you're in the zone, you are in a channeling state.
How did your channeling begin?
My channeling began in 1973, really, when I had two broad daylight UFO sightings over Los Angeles. The first time about 150 feet away, and the second time only about 70 feet away. Black equilateral triangular ship about 30 feet on a side. Because of the sightings, I began doing research on something like that, because now I knew the world was not what I was taught it was. There was some other level to the world that existed that I knew nothing about, and I really needed to find out what was going on now that I had seen something like that. So I began reading all sorts of books on the subject, and eventually I came across books on psychic phenomenon, on channeling, and I was introduced 10 years after the sightings to a channel who was conducting seminars, and I went to listen to the entity coming through that channel for a while. And after a few months, I thought, okay, this is interesting information. It's helpful information. It's constructive information. It helps people change their lives in positive ways. And eventually, the entity actually offered to teach a channeling class for those who would be interested. Now, I went into the class not because I thought I was going to be a channel. I just wanted to further my research and understand what channeling was all about. But the class was a series of guided meditations, and about halfway through the course, when I was in one of those guided meditations, I received what I can only describe as a telepathic hit. And in that one telepathic moment, which was a split second in my head, I remembered making an agreement to do this in this life with Bashar. I understood that the UFO had been shown to me on purpose to get me to start learning the things I needed to learn, so that when the time came, I'd be ready to do the channeling. And all of that information was in my head. And I didn't know if I was hallucinating. I didn't know if this was a side effect of the meditation or what this was. But at the very moment that I had that experience, the entity that was teaching the class stopped talking to the class, turned right to me, and said, there is an entity here for you right now if you're ready to begin. And at the same moment, I looked over, and one of the class members was actually sketching an image of Bashar that I had seen in my head in that second. And so I automatically had two outside validations that this wasn't just my imagination. So I thought, okay, we'll see where this goes. Like I said, I already knew that channeling is a state that can provide interesting perspectives and information. So I thought, all right, this is worthwhile. I did well enough that I started teaching the next class with the teacher. And after that, a woman came who was doing her first doctoral thesis on the connection between psychology and channeling. And she needed subjects, and I became one of her subjects. And she would invite me to her house, and she would invite her friends over, and I would channel for them. And the first week would be like 5 friends, and she would take her notes and make her paper. And the second week, word of mouth spread, it would be 10 friends. And the next week would be 20 friends. And then it just grew to where we had to do it twice a week, and then in 2 houses a week. And then we had to start renting auditoriums, and it just kind of went under its own steam, and before you knew it, I was being asked to go to different cities, different countries, and it just took on a life of its own, and here I am 30 years later.
When you first started channeling, what kind of process did you go through?
There were unusual symptoms associated with the channeling. I know some channels experience this in different ways, some channels don't. For the first couple of years, actually, I would feel like about 24 hours before I would have to channel, I would feel like I was coming down with a cold or a flu. I would get aches and pains in my body that I couldn't explain. My neck would lock up. or I would get a severe pain at the base of my skull. And I quickly learned that these were all just resistances to the energy, that I wasn't used to it. It was sort of coursing through my body, beginning to sort of open up different, let's say, chakra points or energy points within my body, but I wasn't used to it. So it was kind of like stretching me. And that stretching process actually had physiological effects. But after a couple of years, as I relaxed more and let the energy in and trusted it more and what was coming through, it got easier and easier. All those symptoms went away. And eventually, the energy actually became very supportive and very energizing. Whereas it used to tire me out in the beginning, but then it became very uplifting. And after a session, I'm usually much more balanced and much more energized. So those are some of the effects that I recognize that can happen when people begin to channel. And I've talked to a lot of other people who channel who have reported similar effects and similar experiences.
How has channeling Bashar changed you?
Because of the altered state, I get to experience how Bashar feels, how his people feel when that energy is coming through. It's a very, very balanced, very strong emotional state full of confidence. There's absolutely no shadow of a doubt. There's absolute conviction in what they're talking about and the reality they experience. So I get to experience that when that energy is coming through. And since that's so profoundly different than the way most people on this planet operate, it's had the effect of sort of rubbing off on me over the years and allowing me to become more emotionally balanced, to be more mentally clear, to start seeing things from very different perspective and different points of view that I'd never thought of before. It really kind of helps me see things in a sort of a big picture way, see interconnections between things automatically. So it's had profound changes in the way I operate now in life, especially based on the idea of applying a lot of the ideas and principles that Bashar talks about to my life, and seen profound changes in the way I live my life because of that.
What do you say to people when they say they don't think Bashar is real, or that the information is actually just coming from another level of your own consciousness?
Well, the first thing I usually tell anybody and the audiences when we do events is that no one has to believe that Bashar is real to get benefit out of the channeling, because again, it's an altered state that allows us to bring information through from a different level, a different perspective, and it seems to be very beneficial. It could be my own consciousness, and in fact, I actually think my own consciousness has to be involved, because all I'm doing is sort of mirroring or modeling his consciousness. So even if he's not real, I think that it's still a very beneficial state, and people can get a lot of benefit out of it, whether Bashar exists or not. So I just tell them they don't have to believe. Focus on the information. That's the most important thing to me, because that's the thing that makes the biggest difference in our lives when we apply it.
What do your family and friends think about the channeling?
When I first started channeling, my family kind of knew I was doing something unusual. They didn't really, especially my parents, didn't really understand what I was doing. But I was fortunate in that the bottom line for them was that they simply asked me, am I happy? Am I helping people? Are they happier based on what I'm doing? And I said, yes, it seems so. And that they were fine with that. So I was fortunate to have them have that attitude. Um, in terms of other family, a lot of people don't know I do this. I don't ever really bring it up unless it seems important to do so, or unless they're inquiring. Um, Most of my family just sort of takes it in stride. To them, this is sort of, at this point, after 30 years, this is just what I do. It's not necessarily for everyone in my family, but they know that I'm doing something, like I said, that is constructive, that seems to be benefiting people, and so on that level, they accept it.
What do you say to people who think it's just an act?
That's okay. They can think what they want. I know the experience that I'm having. I'm not an actor. I have actually tried to imitate Bashar, and I can't. Um, the thing that's interesting is I've never seen an actor capable of doing what is actually happening to my body and the way the words come out when I'm actually channeling, as certainly not for the sustained amount of time that I do it. It's just what's happening to me. But again, they don't have to believe. I never say anyone has to believe, and I can't prove that Bashar is real anyway, and I would never try, because that's really not what it's all about. If someday Bashar is going to have open contact with us, then he'll be here in the physical, and that'll be all the proof anyone needs. For now, they really are purposely staying in the background because they really want us to focus on the information. They don't want us to focus on them. They've noticed in our history what tends to happen when people focus on the messenger instead of the message, anything from deification to crucifixion. So they understand that we need time to absorb this information, and they stay at arm's length to allow us the opportunity to decide whether or not this information works for us. That's completely up to us. So somebody doesn't want to believe this is real, that's fine. They have their own path. They're going to find what they need somewhere else. I'm just doing this because this is what happened in my life. This is just the way it happened for me.
What kind of feedback do you get from people about what happens for them when they start applying the information they receive from Bashar?
Most of it is positive, very positive. I do believe Bashar's principles do work because I've applied them myself and I've seen the result. And, it's very gratifying when people come back to me, as they often do, and say, I applied what Bashar said. I really got the result that I was looking for. It really changed my life in positive ways. I can't ask for more than that. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Does it work? To me, that's really the proof people are looking for. It's not proving Bashar is real. It's not proving I'm really channeling something else. It's the proof is in, does the information make a difference in your life? Does it work? Does it change things in the way that you really desire things to change in your life? And I keep getting feedback from people that it does. I know it works for me. They know it works for them. I don't know that anything else needs to be said about that.
How has Bashar's information changed your life?
Bashar's information has changed my life greatly because one of the main principles he always talks about is to act on your passion. And what I really enjoy about his information is that he sort of, brings these esoteric concepts down to earth, no pun intended, and he gives us a toolkit that we can use in our lives. And he explains why it's important to act on your passion because, he's explaining that it's our physical body's translation of our true core frequency. And so when you act on your passion, you're in alignment with yourself. I've applied this in a number of different ways throughout my life since I've been channeling him. And I've always seen, every time I apply it the way he says it needs to be applied, precisely, cleanly, without getting in my way, I always get the result that benefits me the most. So I know that in principle it works. And because I now know that, from experience, it's changed my confidence level, it's changed my clarity level about what things are in life, why things happen in life. I understand how to navigate through life in a much more conscious way, and it's much more exciting, it's much more fun.
Before you started the channeling, were you interested in extraterrestrials and the idea of contact?
I've heard people talk about UFO sightings, and I thought that sounded exciting. I thought it would be really cool if we did have contact with extraterrestrials, if they existed, but I never really gave it much thought. I mean, I was interested in science fiction. I love science fiction books and science fiction programs, but it wasn't really something that made me sit down and think that, oh, this is going to happen someday. Certainly after I had the UFO sighting, then that changed everything. I knew it was real, it was solid. And when you see something like that, I mean, it changes you forever. It turns your world upside down. So then I had to know what was behind it. And certainly now I do understand and believe that a lot of the reason Bashar is talking to us is that all of this is a precursor to actual physical contact. And at this point, yeah, I think that that would be extremely exciting.
How old were you when you first started to feel an interest in extraterrestrials and the idea of contact?
Well, I mean, again, I didn't take it that seriously until the channeling really started to happen, which was in my early 30s. But I was interested in science fiction in high school. and, loved, like I said, loved sci-fi programs like Star Trek and so on and so forth. And again, I thought that would be very cool if any of that turned out to be true. But it wasn't something that occupied my daily focus, like, okay, I'm waiting for the aliens to land. No. And, you see sci-fi movies and that's all, fun. But I think back then I was actually more interested in them as movies rather than what they were saying, or, it was just fun. It was fun to be scared by the creepy ones. It was fun to be, feel enlightened by the uplifting ones or thoughtful ones. It made you think. And, that was fun, but none of it ever became truly serious until I actually saw a UFO up close.
What were your dreams when you were in high school as far as what you wanted to do with your life? And
Well, I've always been an artist, so my dreams have always been oriented towards some sort of artistic expression. I mean, I could, as soon as I could pick up a pencil, I was drawing. Like a lot of kids, I would draw dinosaurs and, other fantasy things. I, made my own comic books and things like that when I was really young. So I always knew I was going to head in some artistic direction. I didn't exactly know what that would be. Eventually, it went from graphic arts to more three-dimensional ones as I developed a fascination for special effects and especially miniatures in movies. And so that is a direction I went in 1977, which was obviously after I had the sighting. And I was actually able to sort of start blending the two because, the first program I actually worked on was a TV show called Project UFO, ironically enough. And it was kind of like Dragnet from the Air Force perspective, where two Air Force officers would go around investigating UFO sightings and reports, and they would try to get the facts and all that, and they would come to us. The producers would come to us, and we would build all the saucers and things like that people said they saw. And what was fun about it is one day they came to us and said, we don't really have a description for this particular UFO in this program. Have you guys ever had any experiences where you could do so? I said, yeah, I actually had a sighting. And they said, oh, what'd you see? And I told them, oh, the triangle and blah, blah. They said, oh, build that, do that. So I actually got to build a miniature of the UFO I saw, and it was actually in the TV program. And so that was kind of cool.
what do you experience while you're channeling?
For me, the channeling is like falling into a deep daydream. I know there's something going on. I'm conscious that there is an interaction. I don't really hear the words. It's kind of like if someone falls into a daydream and they're so lost in it that someone walks in the room and they have to call their name like 5 times before they hear them. It's like that. The words are so far away, they might as well be in another building. I'm experiencing images, I'm experiencing feelings, energies flowing through me in a very time-collapsed way, very symbolic, abstract things, sometimes very literal, depending on what he's describing. Um, I'll see energy patterns that are representative of the people he might be talking to, because he's like looking at them as informational patterns, and he's picking up the information he needs from them, from their higher minds, from other sources, from who knows where, to bring through the answers to the questions that they're asking him. So those things take on sometimes geometric shapes, different colors. Sometimes it'll be represented by a symbolic object. It just keeps changing, and I just get sort of lost in this rush of imagery and energy and feeling, and then I come out of it, and it's like when I come out of the channeling state, maybe 3 hours have gone by, and I'll only feel like maybe it's been an hour or something like that. So it's a very collapsed state of high energy, high imagery, high feeling. It's really a euphoric state. It's an ecstatic state, and everything else just goes away.
What advice can you give to others who feel a desire to channel the way you do?
If they are excited about vocal channeling, one of the things I've learned that is a very strong technique to allow it to come through a little bit more smoothly is not to just do it on your own, is to actually have friends in a safe environment ask you questions. Because then it's kind of like grounding the energy, like pulling the information through you to them, like a circuit. It like grounds the circuit. Whereas if you're just sitting in your room alone, trying to download information, well, you can, but it's just going to come to you telepathically. There's no reason for you to actually go into a state where you're vocally channeling if there's no one else in the room, because you get the information and you have it, and that's it. But the presence of other people can really pull the information through you and help you just get out of the way, because then it's all about you just becoming a conduit. You don't have to sit there and think, am I getting the right information? What do I think about the information? Or anything like that. You sort of just become a hollow tube, and the information just comes through you to them from whatever source it's coming from.
Are you the only person that Bashar channels through, or does he channel through others?
Bashar has channeled through other people in the past, mostly for the purpose of training them to get used to channeling other entities. So he's acted as kind of a mentor for a few other people. And I've seen him come through one other person, in person, a Japanese woman, where it was coming out, of course, in Japanese, because that's the language she's programmed with. But it was distinctly his personality. Now, at this point, no, I'm the only one that actually channels Bashar. There are other members of his society, his world of Esasani, that also might be first contact specialists that other people might tap into. It's possible they might bring them through. At this time, I'm the only one that Bashar channels through, and a lot of it is to also avoid any confusion, so that the information coming through is coming from a single source. Because there is a difference in the kind of information that's coming through now from him to our world, and he wants to make sure that there really is only one specific delivery for that information and one interpretation for that information, so that it's as clear as it can possibly be without being confused by other people bringing it through simultaneously that might have different interpretations, different ways of expressing things that could cause confusion in people listening for the information.
What do you think is the most important thing for people to understand about channeling?
I think the most important thing for people to understand about channeling is that it is natural. Everyone has the ability. It's nothing mysterious. It's something that is representative, I think, of our evolution as a species, to be awakened more, to be more conscious of who we are, more able to express more of our greater being than just focusing on our physical selves as the only thing that we are. So I think it's a pathway that people have of expressing and understanding more of really what we are.
What is your relationship with Bashar?
Bashar has said that from a linear perspective, you could say, I am one of his past lives and he is one of my future lives. He's expressed that we are, in essence, the same soul in two different time frames. Because he says, everything exists simultaneously, all at once. Linear time is an illusion. So because past, present, and future actually all exist at the same time, that's what makes it possible for a so-called future self to actually be able to speak through a so-called past self. That's why we can actually make a connection energetically and have the channeling happen. But he's also a guide, he's also a mentor, he's also an indication to me of what potential lies within me, not so much to become him, but to become, as myself, my version of him on earth, to live to my fullest potential as he expresses the way he lives on his planet, to do my version of that here.
What do you feel are some of the more remarkable features of your channeling?
Well, one of the things that has always fascinated me is that when I'm in the channeling state and Bashar is coming through, like when most people try to get an idea across, like you're hearing in me, they pause, they'll go, that never seems to happen in the delivery, in the channeling. And it's never happened in 30 years. It's almost like the information is coming through in one lump into my brain, and then it's like just unfurling automatically as if it's being dictated or something like that. So I've always found that particular aspect of the channeling fascinating, and it's one of the reasons why I think you can't really compare it exactly to acting or to any other form of normal human communication, because people need time to think about what they're saying. They hesitate for a variety of reasons. And the information that comes through in the channeling state from Bashar is just like a laser, and it just goes until it stops, and it doesn't miss a beat.
Bashar often talks about how important it is to follow your passion, follow your dreams. For you at this point, in addition to the channeling, what is your highest excitement?
Well, filmmaking is a very high excitement for me, but I think it really comes down to storytelling. It comes down to communicating ideas that are unusual, different, that make people think about things in different ways. That's really the excitement for me. It's creating ideas and environments, different perspectives, so that people get a different understanding or a more expanded understanding of what's possible. I think that that's exciting, and in any medium in which that can be done, like film or channeling, those are the things that attract me the most.
In following your passion and living the idea of your highest excitement, in addition to channeling and other activities that you do you have any kind of a secret dream or anything like that that is associated with what Bashar is sharing with you?
Well, it would certainly be cool if I could get on his ship and get a ride. I really feel that, when I began the channeling and got more familiar with all of this, it's opened up a different understanding of my greater being, and I feel like I would be really at home on the bridge of a ship, of a spaceship. So that would be a dream of mine. It would be to actually be on one of his spaceships. I think that would be awesome.